So Kieran is a proud Biripi man, born and raised on the Purfleet Aboriginal Mission in Taree. Now, Kieran, if I say anything, pronounce anything wrong, you'll have to correct me. In New South Wales, he's been involved in STEM for more than 20 years, most notably as the co-founder of LOGiT Australia or LOGiT Australia. I'm terrible today. The business is a Supply Nation certified, majority Indigenous staff business co-founded with Colombian woman Natalia Flores in 2016, and is one of the first Indigenous businesses to develop software applications in-house. Very cool. Kieran has been championing for increased representation of Indigenous people in STEM throughout a range of volunteering, scholarships, traineeships, and other initiatives. The outcomes of LOGiT IT and more recently Weaver are the reflection of his passion and commitment to the advancement of Indigenous people. Weaver was developed by LOGiT in collaboration with the CSIRO, Advanced Queensland, and MEGT. MEGT? I don't know, Lord. The system helps organisations manage, schedule, prioritise and track their activities. Oh, that's cool. Against reconciliation strategy commitments. It's a lovely dashboard if you go to their website. The system could not have come at a better time, with many organisations, including everybody on the call here today, jumping at the opportunity to have more visibility of the progress made in their Indigenous engagement, allowing them to celebrate their achievements, increase collaboration, adapt, learn as they go, and embed Indigenous culture authentically into their organisation's culture. Now, I've made a dog's breakfast of that, so I'm going to hand over to Kieran. Hi, Kieran.
Hey, hello everyone, and good yigu, welcome to this session. Yeah, thank you for that, Sister Leanne. Long-winded introduction there. I think it kind of built up a little bit more than everyone's expectations are. So let's just see how we go anyway. So I'd just like to quickly also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we all meet on today. We too are meeting on Turrbal and Jagera country today, this is where our office is here in Mugginjin, Brisbane. I'm a proud Biripi man from the mid-north coast of New South Wales, which we were just at over the weekend as well. It was my nan's 70th birthday, and it was quite significant because none of the rest of my family have made 70. So just, I guess to non-Indigenous people, 70 is a benchmark, but not necessarily setting any records in your family. Where to see Auntie, and she's still in reasonably good health and definitely in good spirits, gave us all a lot of I guess incentive, or made us feel a little bit brighter about our futures as well. But it was great to catch up with everyone there, and excuse me if my yarns are a little bit long-winded. Every time I go back on country, there's this thing that I'm not sure if you've heard of it before. It's called deep time. It goes into the song lines, and even if I'm only there for a few days, I start to sink into my song lines, into my deep time, and I get a little bit slower than I'm normally. So it takes me a couple of weeks to come out of it as well. Good yigu, welcome everyone. We're having a little bit of a yarn about reconciliation, corporate reconciliation, and the strategies to be able to successfully, I guess, implement reconciliation within your organizations. I think, a nice place to start with when it comes down to reconciliation is the core outcome that we're trying to achieve here. And I always believe that the greatest thing that reconciliation can achieve is to have Indigenous culture embedded within your own culture, the culture of your organisation, of your office, even of your family. You know, this is a journey from both sides, where if we're able to embed and bring 60,000 plus years of culture and wisdom and custodianship into your own culture, your own knowledge and your own love for this country, I believe that we'll all not only come closer together, but become our love and respect for the country that we live on will come deeper as well. So the other, I guess, side of it when it comes down to corporate reconciliation is that when we're able to embed Indigenous culture into an organisation's culture, it means that Indigenous people are at the forefront of decision making rather than an afterthought. And that is often where things get difficult. When we're talking about reconciliation strategies such as Indigenous participation plans or reconciliation action plans, closing the gap strategies, etc. There's a number of variant names of that are all trying to kind of go down the same objective there. I think being able to change decision making is at the core of where change occurs. And I think it's often where things have either gone wrong or just haven't gone smoothly, where it's seemed difficult. And I believe there's, I guess, 3 core areas of any reconciliation strategy. And these are obviously around increasing Indigenous representation as far as employment, supporting the Indigenous business sector, which means procuring services there, and also around this cultural awareness, which really gets into the core of what I've just been talking about. And in some ways, organisations have done well in one or more of those areas, but I really come back and harp on that point about embedding our culture within your culture, because that part of the area of cultural awareness training, that's meant to be the outcome, not that you know just what country you're living and working on, not just that you know a few of the 101s. Like, this is 2022. We've been moving on this I guess reconciliation journey for 20 odd years now. We should be a little bit more along the path there. I understand that some things move quickly and some things move slowly, but I believe that our focus needs to be on that cultural awareness in a day-to-day thing. And I talk with a lot of mob and employees often still feel a lot of cultural load and feel that a lot of workspaces are unsafe environments culturally, which tells me immediately, and these are people that are working for some of Australia's biggest organisations. And these organisations have had reconciliation strategies in place for a long, long time. So I think sometimes the focus can be a little distracted on some of the 101 sort of stuff. And in some ways, some of these strategies can be a little bit self-defeating in the size and complexity of it. Some of these ones have more than 100 deliverables attached to them. And in some ways, whilst when you go through, the majority of them really do strike a chord as being important. In some ways, a lot of them are a little bit need to be kind of broken out into what are just tasks that we should be doing, and what are actual commitments that require deeper action. And then I think that would probably get us back to a more realistic bunch of things that we need to put our blinkers on and focus our attention. So the area around cultural learning, cultural awareness really needs to get to that point where you're not only understanding why it's important to hire Indigenous staff and procure from Indigenous businesses, why we're at such a disadvantage compared to non-Indigenous Australia, and why there is a role corporate Australia and governments play a significant role there. You know, obviously, the economy is driven by business, and you know, every country's success, and Australia is a successful country, let's be honest. So, you know, every business has a contribution to society to make, whether they're, you know, whether they do education such as universities and things, or they're involved in health or construction, you know, mining and resources. You know, as much as us mob aren't happy with that, it's a real thing out there, and you know, those organizations actually generally have the longest history of working with Indigenous land groups. So in some ways, they have been working with traditional owners for quite a long time, and you see that doesn't always go smoothly as well. So I really, you know, I'm really talking about the cultural learning side of things as being something that will be a core part of your reconciliation journey. So whether you're just starting the journey, as a lot of organizations, you know, in this post-COVID world, there's so much more interest at the moment by organizations to become part of the reconciliation movement, to join in this, and to I guess start their own journey, which is deadly. And so whether you're just at the beginning or whether, you know, you've been on this journey for a while, I think it's around understanding that you just need, like with anything, you start at the basics, but you need to have a bit of a strategy of evolving that learning as well, and not starting too complex, but, you know, not at the same time, not just sitting and being satisfied with learning the 101 stuff and saying, yep, job done, we're culturally aware now. I think that will become apparent in the feedback of your staff, your Indigenous staff, and your non-Indigenous staff as well, because if they're genuinely culturally aware, then they'll probably be asking for a more culturally inclusive working environment as well. We have at LOGiT Australia, like, we're only a small tech firm here, but we're majority Indigenous staffed. We've got a mixture of Indigenous trainees and some experienced mob as well here. You know, we've got people from, you know, Torres Strait Island all the way through down to Palawa in Tasmania. So we've got mob representing different nations, and all of them work very well together, and all of them were very respectful of each other's cultures. And we take time to celebrate significant moments of those nations, and to have yarns with each other, especially during this recent reconciliation week celebrations across the nation, which has really kind of felt like a whole month of love and support for our mob, which, you know, we'll take that anytime we can get it. Let's try and push it out to a year now. We've got NAIDOC week coming up around the corner as well, which, you know, I've always thought of as Black Christmas, when there's so many amazing cultural events happening, and it fills our heart with joy to see our culture celebrated on such a great platform. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think all mob out there will be. It's a really great chance for us, Indigenous Australia and non-Indigenous Australia, to come together and celebrate. You know, with all the challenges are there, it's just a chance to celebrate and love one another, and understand, you know, how deep this culture is and how much we have to offer as custodians. So getting back to those core areas, I think a lot of the time the complexity in reconciliation strategies can come down to the overwhelming number of commitments and actions and deliverables that organisations are asked to sign up to. And that's right from the beginning. And I've seen a lot of organisations that are starting their reconciliation journey with these plans or strategies, and I can see in their eyes they're overwhelmed. You know, they get like 12 months or something to be able to go through these things, and they're just beginning. I think you know, this is just my opinion, that we need to scale back and get back to some core objectives here. If you don't have any Indigenous employees, then employ an Indigenous person. If you're not procuring from an Indigenous business, go to a supply nation or go to one of the Indigenous chambers of commerce in your state. You know, I've been fortunate enough to sit on the committee for the Southeast Queensland Indigenous Chamber of Commerce here, which sponsor the Meanjin markets in Brisbane here as well, which promotes a lot of the deadly artisan Indigenous businesses in our area here. They can absolutely help you get started. You know, it may be a local Indigenous business or it could be a national size Indigenous business, but you know, that's where you want to start that young. You know, as far as your cultural learning, if you're not doing any, start with a real basic one. There's a few out there. I've seen that government funded mob in Canberra there, AATSIS, I think they are. They've got a real simple one. It's like 101 sort of stuff, but if you haven't done any cultural awareness training, I think it's called core learning or something like that. And again, like reach out to them, reach out to NIAA, you know, that's the federal body there. Reach out to the Indigenous Chambers of Commerce in your state. New South Wales is the New South Wales ICC, which is run by Debbie Barwick, Auntie there, she's deadly and she'll yarn your ear off. Down in Victoria, it's Kinaway, who are fantastic. One of the most well funded by their state body there as well. So if you're in Victoria, have a yarn to them. Brother Scott McCartney runs it over there. I know the Noongar Chamber of Commerce, Indigenous Chamber of Commerce over in Western Australia is fantastic as well. You know, I won't carry on, but also as well as that, we do have reconciliation bodies in each state as well. So we've got REC Queensland, we've got REC WA, we've got REC SA, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania. You know, they're all there. And they're all there to support you. And whatever strategy you're on, you know, you don't have to necessarily just be on a RAP, as they call it, the Reconciliation Action Plan. You can be on any strategy and you can still call up those state bodies. They run their own show and they're there to support organisations through their journey wherever they're up to, and they're really helpful. We've got great relationships with them, and we really see that their messaging and their support for corporations is super strong. So yeah, it essentially, I think, you know, you need to get back to basics when you're setting yourself up to go on this reconciliation journey and not be lumbered with too much to start with, because I've seen a lot of organizations, it just stalls them. They can't even get off the starting line with it because there's so much going on, and it comes and goes. We know, you know, time's moving faster and faster. Like, you know, a year just disappears like that these days. You know, we're in such a busy world where we're always connected and we're always busy. So 12 months of, you know, you doing your own job plus trying to do some, you know, get on a reconciliation journey, you just run out of time before you even know it. You're chasing your tail, you know, within a few months of this thing launching. The launch is great. You know, we see organizations have spectacular launches. They have fantastic artwork on the front and throughout these documents. But then when you go and yarn to them, they're floundering, they're struggling, they feel weighed down. And if I'm being honest, reconciliation should not start like that. This is something that you guys should be super proud that you're on that journey. This should be something that celebration should be the very beginning of a very exciting phase for the organization and for all of the members of that team to be entering into this new stage. You know, with the change after COVID, where everyone was locked away and, you know, it all sucked being in lockdown there. Coming out of this, people seem to be more connected with community now than we used to be. We've come back to life again. You know, we're back, starting to transition back to working to live, not living to work. And that's also being reflected in how organisations are being judged on their performance, where previously they were only judged on their performance by their balance sheet, how much they made. Now they're also being judged on their social impact. It's a huge thing now, and it really is influencing which organisations employees want to go to, good talent, you know, where clients are going to go to, even, you know, which ones suppliers work with as well, let alone shareholders. You know, they're becoming far more aware about the social impact that organisations are making as well. And that's really coming down to their decision about their investing. So, you know, obviously in Australia, when it comes down to social impact, I think the greatest challenge still to overcome here is the difference in lifestyle that Indigenous people have compared to non-Indigenous people. You know, a lot of it comes down to previous government policies and things around the White Australia policy and stuff, which really was deliberate there to hold us down. It wasn't the individual Australians. We saw in a 1967 referendum that there was like 90-something%, overwhelming, no problem, a lot of love, and they're all saying it's about time, right? That's back in 1967. So, you know, we got to all like understand that this was a government-driven thing, and it goes back to, you know, right back to the beginning of colonisation when they tried to say that this was no man's land here and claim it through that. So it's always been a difficult thing for governments to be able to acknowledge us and work with us in the right way, because they really started off from telling a few furfies. So where we are right now is not something where you know, your average Joe or Jane should be feeling a weight of responsibility at all. It's about picking up, getting on this journey and moving forward, and just understanding that we've got a beautiful culture and you're all part of it now. You know, you are part of Australia's journey, and all of the nations around Australia, wherever you live. You've got a huge opportunity to be able to connect with the mob in those areas. You know, sometimes it's as simple as that. About reaching out to your local community here. And we know, you know, we've moved from, well, I've moved around a lot since I got off the mish as a kid. But I just like to travel. I'm very nomadic. And we moved up to Brisbane about 6 years ago, and we connected up straight away with Jagera and Turrbal mob up here, and Quandamooka mob and mob from, you know, Yugambeh. My nan actually comes from Cherbourg. She's Waka Waka mob here, you know. Her parents were Rangi Logan and Stella Blair. So we've got deep bloodline in Queensland as well, even though I'm a proud Koori. They hate that when it comes to state of origin, I tell you. I'm not very popular in Queensland here around that time, but nah, it's all good. But look, you know, connecting up with the local Indigenous community, you know, it doesn't even have to be the traditional elders. You'll get introduced to them, don't worry. But if you can go along to Aboriginal Medical Centre or Aboriginal like land councils and stuff like that, go along to your local one, you'll find them. Talk to your local council as well and ask them where they are. If you don't know where to find them, like, they're not that hard to find. And then have a yarn about where you are in your journey, and just ask them, you know, say, oh, look, you know, we're part of a university, or we're part of a construction company, or we do this and we do that. You know, is there anything in those services that we do that might be helpful for your young ones, or any of any of your mob that might be in business or looking for opportunities, there's a great start right there, right? That's reconciliation, you know, rock star level, right from the get-go. And that's what I mean. Sometimes I think there's this mystery and you know, drama and all of that surrounding like reconciliation, and it's not. It's just about coming together, and literally that's about sitting down at the table and having a chat and saying, look, this is what we do. We want to be part of bringing the community together, and mob should be able to help you with that. They should help you with ideas of things, because every community, every Indigenous community's got different challenges going on at the moment. You know, some of them up north there around where the mining and resources is, they've got challenges of their own that are different from what my people have got. We don't have any mining going on there. We're still going through some native title stuff, which is, you know, really difficult and triggering for our people to have all of that stuff dug up and have to go through that years of being justifying that you've been here continuously during that time. So yeah, there's always different things going on, but you know, at the end of the day, Indigenous people in Australia are living in the same community and are looking to have a nice way of life just as everyone else. So when you think about it, there's very similar things. The gaps aren't too hard to find. And as organisations, you all have particular gifts that you provide to society, whether it be local, state, national, or globally, that keep this world running and make it a fantastic place and create prosperity and good livelihoods for people. So, you know, there's always an opportunity there to be able to see what your particular skill set, what your superpower as an organisation is, and how that can be used specifically. We see a lot of organisations that want to do things for Indigenous people. They come up with initiatives that when you look at it, are so far away from what their skill set is that they're just like, oh, we'll just do something. Well, you know, we'll hold a footy day, and it's like, cool, but it's not really you utilising your come from your strengths. You know, don't just pluck something out of the air. When you're coming from your strengths, you're always going to be better. What you guys do as an organisation, you're going to be able to achieve those things better because that's in your sweet spot. That's in your zone, right? Your skill set. So if you can come up with initiatives there that as an organisation you can use your superpowers, it's not only going to be more helpful for the Indigenous communities, but it's going to be more helpful as far as the success of your organisation contributing. You're going to get better outcomes. The staff that you get involved are going to feel more comfortable as well because they're using their talents rather than being asked to do something they really have no idea. So it's demystifying a lot of this as well. They may get opportunities there to spend time with Indigenous people and you know, get through some of those barriers that they might have as well. Like, you know, so it really does kind of, I guess, kill a few birds with the one stone, and it removes some of that difficulty. So I think that's a little bit about reconciliation at that point. I guess the other thing is that with any organisation managing a strategy has to have steps. So I talked about the 101 stuff, but once you've gotten to that point, there needs to be another stage. And sometimes I think with reconciliation, it's a journey. It doesn't have necessarily a start or a stop. Like you join the movement, but the movement's been moving for a while. Hey, you just jumped on here, so you're part of it now. But it doesn't have a finish as well. So that's a difficult thing for corporations sometimes that are very project driven, where they have a start and stop on everything. But a strategy is something that always seems to evolve. And one of the things, I guess, about reconciliation is that with a strategy, you shouldn't necessarily put pressure on yourself to go to that next stage of your strategy within a set prescribed period of time. You can give yourself targets, aspirational targets, where it'd be really great to see if we could do this, if we could hire one person within 1 year, you know, let's see if we can do that. If we knock that out of the park, awesome. You know, if we can hire some young kid, Indigenous kid, and whether it be on a traineeship or something, you know, right at that ground floor level, then that's deadly. And, you know, if you can use that opportunity for them to even help you create a more culturally safe environment, fantastic. You know, and then they may even introduce some of their family or friends or something. So it starts to grow, but don't kind of say, oh, we need to get this done in 6 months, or we need to get this done in 12 months. It's your journey. You know, you guys might get it done really quickly. Something might come up, an opportunity might come up there where you find some amazing young talent, or you want to, you know, you might jump on a meeting like this and find a deadly Indigenous business that you want to do some work with. But, you know, it may come quickly or it may come slowly. And the main thing is not to kind of rush these things. And I see that's the next problem, is that sometimes there's this set time, and if we don't hit it, we feel like we've failed. And there isn't any failing. You know, it's like with anything, you learn best from your mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes. But the main thing that I heard at the recent reconciliation conference time and time again from Mob was saying, don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, Mob won't be too hard on you. We just want you on the journey rather than not being on the journey at all. You know, we're happy that you're on the journey. It's deadly. This is, you know, this is power, and we grow from mistakes. That's how we've all become the powerhouses that we are in our lives. Is, you know, we learn more, we grow more from the mistakes than from high-fiving ourselves all the time. So I think, you know, taking that pressure off yourself, understanding that you do have stages that you need to get to, but I think you rather than setting KPIs, set yourself indicators where you can kind of tell if you've gotten to that point yet, and then go, cool, we're either getting close to it, or we're there now, and now we can start talking about what we need to do at that next stage. Now we need to start, you know, now we've done the 101 stuff, and we did a little survey or something like that with people and got some really good information. You know, people told us some great stuff that changed their way of thinking. Or the very next NAIDOC week, a lot of business units within our teams kind of went to a different level on how they participated in it. It'll kind of reveal itself, you know. You know, procurement, it'll be like, all right, so we were before we started off, and we got some Indigenous, you know, morning teas, caterer, or we got some Indigenous business that did some office supplies for us. It's like, cool. You know, you'll get to that point where it's like, now we're, you know, really, we know a lot of Indigenous businesses out there. We're working with some of them either on a regular basis or as required. We're looking at our spending habits across the business in different areas, and we're trying to work out where, if we can match that with Indigenous suppliers, so that we're not just getting Indigenous suppliers that, you know, clean our floors, or, you know, the construction companies where they're just labourers digging holes for us, but they're also supplying software, they're engineers, they're, you know, providing more of these areas where we need to see Indigenous people increase the representation in. It's something that I think Leanne mentioned in talking me up at the start there, was that it's a big thing for us to increase representation of Indigenous people in STEM. And I saw that young brother Corey Tutt from Deadly Science there got an Order of Australia medal there yesterday. So big love to him. You know, we're big fans of his work. He does a lot for community and a lot of bringing corporate Australia into that space. But it's it's a space where we haven't typically been very well represented. Like, we do software in-house where we bring young people in to learn about this from scratch. We put them through, you know, we're Microsoft partners and stuff. So we work with as many organizations we can to help us get these kids, grow these kids up, because it's important, because the world is moving so fast towards STEM related roles. They say that by 2050, 4 out of 5 jobs are going to be STEM related. If our people are not on the bus right now, we're going to be left at the bus stop. And that means that we're not standing still, we're actually taking steps backwards. And that's something that we can't afford to do that in 2022. So it takes a concerted effort around procurement as well for organizations to say, you know, we need to find if our spending, we spend, you know, 20% in the cleaning and all of that sort of stuff. Our software and these IT, you know, cybersecurity and stuff, we spend this percentage. Why can't we start, when you guys get more advanced on your strategy, that's where you can kind of get to that way of thinking and going, cool, we've gotten past that hurdle of procuring Indigenous businesses. Then we got past the hurdle of, you know, working out like how we can have ongoing relationships and work very well with Indigenous businesses. So we got better at that. And now we're at the stage where it's like we're looking for different variations of suppliers out there to satisfy the different needs that we spend money in as businesses, and then to see how much we spend in those different areas and try to mirror that and try to reflect that in your Indigenous. So there's heaps of ways, but it needs to be evolving, and it needs to be at the speed that you can achieve as well. I would highly recommend when you're doing a reconciliation strategy, having an Indigenous person involved. I know that sounds pretty obvious, but you would be surprised how many times it doesn't happen. And that's fine at the very beginning, but it needs to be one of your first goals. Whether it be having someone actually employed within your business to be able to do that specifically with that specific skill set as well, or whether you procure an Indigenous consultant or consultancy in, and there's a lot of really good ones out there, really, really deadly. And they will absolutely take you on that journey in a very meaningful way. So yeah, you know, I couldn't highly recommend that enough, that you do need an Indigenous person with specific skills. Don't just grab an Indigenous person off the street and say, cool, take care of our RAP for us, or take care of our Indigenous strategy for us. It's you know, you gotta, there's Indigenous people that are skilled in this. So seek them out, definitely, and especially the consultants. They're working with a lot of organizations, so they've got this wealth of knowledge, of experience of seeing what works in different areas for different size organizations as well, so they can kind of understand your maturity and set a better path for you along there, and tell you what matters, what's going to make the biggest impact at the moment, and what potentially you know, you can focus on later. You know, I play Sudoku a lot because I'm an Indigenous, so when I'm not coding, I'm doing other stupid games. And the thing about Sudoku is that you always start off with the easiest options first. And then when you go through those easier options, it reveals another bunch of options to you, and then another bunch of options. And before you know it, you know, there's only 1 or 2 real hard thinking things that you need to do. And that by that time, that requires a little bit of strategy and knowing what you're doing, right? It's like with anything, Sudoku is just one of those nice games that kind of reflects how to peel away the layers there of complexity and get back to, you know, what can we do today, and understand that if we can overcome that, we're probably going to see the next stages ahead of us. It looks like I've taken up a hell of a lot of time just yarning when this was meant to be interactive. So I might kind of throw it out there and see if anyone's got any questions to throw at me. I told you I was in deep time.
I know. I'm sitting here riveted. So Kieran, thank you so much. And hopefully people have got some questions. By the sound of it, I know that a lot of people sort of have this hesitancy and this fear of going, oh my God, I'm going to say the wrong thing, I'm going to do the wrong thing, so I'm going to do nothing. And by the sound of it, you you're speaking the language, and everybody knows I'm the empathy chick, but you're speaking the language of empathy, which is getting rid of those preconceived notions and just listening and going, right, how can I be in this space? How can I contribute in this space? How can I listen? And that will give you the best, I guess, starting point, as opposed to having this assumption that we need to have the right answers. We need a plan. We need a checklist. We need to achieve this, this, and this. It's like, no, no, no. Open your ears, open your heart, look at what you can do right now. And I guess take those first steps. Start, make those meaningful connections. Start to ask the questions. Start to listen, as opposed to feeling like compelled to have the right answer and you're afraid to get it wrong, because yeah, none of us like that feeling, but there's a level of vulnerability in going, this matters, like this shit matters, and we've got to get out of our own way in order to open up I guess ourselves to that discomfort, to that uncertainty. So having these conversations is so important, because it gives us permission as well to go, oh, I don't have to be perfect all the time. I can get it wrong. I can fail forward. But so long as I'm on the path, so long as I'm asking the question in an open-minded, open-hearted way. Does anyone want to ask a question?
That's all right. I think something else that I want to kind of just mention is that obviously organisations, if they're going to implement something across their business, it's very different than if they're implementing something within their team. You know, within a team, you can just have a bit of a yarn, but across your business, you can be all over the place. You know, you can be in different states and different offices and stuff like that. So most organizations require a system. You know, when it comes to those core business areas like finance and HR, you know, customer relations and things like that, they have a system to be able to manage these things. So I'll just give us a plug here, because we developed the first ever reconciliation business management system called Weaver. And I think Leanne will probably share the link to it there. But, you know, this was something where we didn't come up with this. It wasn't like I was standing in the shower one morning and had this light bulb moment and going, oh, deadly, all right, I'm going to solve reconciliation. No. So we had some reconciliation managers who have been on the journey for a long time. Some of the most experienced reconciliation managers out there, as Leanne mentioned before, from Advanced Queensland Government, CSIRO and MEGT, who are apprenticeships and traineeships national organisation there, they came to us and said, look, we're tired of not only having this huge strategy where we've got so many moving parts that we need to kind of implement across the business, a huge challenge there. But on top of that, we have to chase people up for information. We have to put it into, you know, a spreadsheet, which is like, you know, spreadsheets can get corrupted and go missing, and someone jumps in there and just throws some rubbish and deletes things. Like they're not a great thing for managing across business function, across different areas and divisions and things like that. Can very easily get messy. And as an Indigenous, data cleansing is a very important thing, and spreadsheets I would not recommend outside of team-based work. But on top of that, they're trying to get information, and then they're expected to be data analysts as well, and to put this into reporting, which tells a meaningful story about how their organisation's journey is going and where they can identify areas for improvement. You know, reconciliation managers have had their backs against the wall for a very long time, and I think in some ways that's why they came to us. They're like, well, look, great, finally there's an Indigenous software company out there that develops software in-house. Here's a good challenge for you guys. And so that kind of kicked off 18 months of us sitting down and going through with a fine-tooth comb all the things that the consistent things that reconciliation managers need to do to be able to implement strategies effectively, and how technology could take that heavy lifting off their shoulders so they could just go out there and be deadly and work with everyone. And that's where Weaver was launched in October last year. And we have had an enormous amount of love and support, with just about everyone overwhelmingly saying, where have you been for the last 20 years? Where has Weaver been? Yeah, so it's been great. It's enabling us to hire more young Indigenous trainees who love this, because it's a culturally safe software, first of its kind. Organisations love it because it's the first time they've ever had an Indigenous made software in their suite of software systems, business systems. So it's something where everyone's kind of going, wow, this is a pretty exciting stage. This is, you know, moving from safe to brave. In some ways, the IT guys have never had to work with an Indigenous business to implement a system before. It's cool. So I just thought I'd put that out there quickly. I think Paul might have jumped in there. He wanted to have a question there.
Yeah. Paul, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, first of all, Kieran, thank you. And what great news having your auntie or your mum get to 70. That's
my Auntie Ray, Auntie Raylene.
It's the family, it's the genes. That's awesome. And thanks for sharing also how important it is for us to feel okay about not knowing and stepping sometimes in places that can be. So I'm wearing two hats. I'm here just as an individual, but also a social entrepreneur. I'm really actually an ecological entrepreneur. I'm interested in how we actually tell the story of who we are. And there's a thing that I haven't really launched yet, which is called Arts Evolution. It's about an evolution of the arts. What are the arts? And it's also about the arts of evolution, how we're going to survive as a species in this next decade, century, and beyond. The importance of taking time, deep time, like you've mentioned, is really critical. And I'm also here, and my other hat is I'm currently an elected councillor at Redland City Council on Quandamooka country, and there's a lot going on in that space. Part of what I'm interested in is you talked before about peeling away the layers of complexity and making sure we connect with people. Everyone's at different stages in the reconciliation journey. How do we reach out and make those connections authentically without running the risk of, there's a lot of capacity constraint because Indigenous mob are going through so much. Hard to know sometimes who to reach out to. I think you've given us some great indications of contact the businesses that have stuck their hands up. But have you got any suggestions of where we start at the personal level? And how do we reach out and just make that human contact to really humanize the starting of that journey?
Yeah, deadly. Thank you, brother. Yeah, it's a good question. I think when it comes down to like that connection, there's a number of great opportunities. I think, you know, I think obviously with NAIDOC week coming around the corner, there's many events going on across the country, which are a fantastic way, and a lot of these are being driven by your local Indigenous community because it's such a celebration. It's a really fantastic time to be able to go and connect up with your local mobs there. I know a lot of traditional owners on Quandamooka country as well, you know, just on that specific one, like we spent New Year's out on 1 mile out on North Straddie there with you know, invited by traditional owners out there, and had a fantastic time. Very, very powerful country there as well. But yeah, I think those events are a really good opportunity, and I think that's part of what those events, that time is about as well. It's not just having a nice little morning tea or going along and watching, you know, the local mob do a ceremony. It's about having that chance to walk up to them after that and have a bit of a yarn to them and introduce yourself. Say what company you're from, and ask if there's a chance to be able to have a coffee or a cup of tea and a yarn sometime else, where you can kind of introduce yourselves as a business more formally and tell them what kind of things you do, and then ask them how that kind of might fit into some of the challenges that they may have going on at the moment. I would recommend reaching out to the local Aboriginal Land Council or in lieu of that, the medical centre, Aboriginal medical centres. They often have a lot of the unspoken heroes of the community, of the Indigenous community, that'll be working there, and 100% guaranteed that's a really good way to be able to start a yarn there. You know, a lot of my cousins and my aunties work for the Biripi Aboriginal Medical Centre there, and they do a lot of activities, but you know, they're really culturally embedded as well. So, you know, they're not just professionals working in a professional space. They're professionals who are responsible for keeping their communities strong. So if you guys want to go and talk to get that introduction underway outside of like NAIDOC week events or National Reconciliation Week events, yeah, I'd recommend, you know, that would be a good starting point. You said you're from Redland Council there. I'm sure you've got an Indigenous engagement officer within there, so you know they'd be able to point you in the right direction as well. And then, you know, it's really important that different areas of your business go and sit down with that person within your organisation, within your council there, and external organisations come and have a yarn and buy that brother or sister a cup of tea as well, and have a yarn with them as well to make sure this is community, right? And your local council can turn that on, because they do have an Indigenous engagement officer 99% of the time as well. So hopefully that gives you a few spots to head to.
Awesome. Hopefully that answered your question, Paul. Thank you, Kieran. Did anybody want to ask one last question before we wrap up? Because it is 1:27. Any other questions? If not, Kieran, thank you so much for giving us your time. Yeah, I can see thumbs up and claps. Like that was just, it was just lovely. And yeah, because it wasn't a, this is what to do and this is what you need to do and these are the things to be careful of and this is, yeah. So thank you so much. I'm going to record all of this. I will email and I'll put as many links as I can remember. But yeah, if I will put all sorts of links and stuff like that. But thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Kieran.
No problem. Thank you everyone. It's good to meet you all, and good luck with your journeys there, and stay safe. Marangbu, couple.